Mr. Mayor, we are live.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I'd like to welcome everybody in chamber tonight to the special council meeting of Wednesday, October 15th, 2025. This is an electronic hybrid meeting, public meeting regarding the proposed City of Barrie / Oro-Medonte boundary adjustment. Deputy Mayor Lavoie will be joining us later by Zoom. So he's caught in traffic right now, but he will be joining us in a bit. I'd now like to call the meeting to order. Before reading the land acknowledgement, I'd like to address a few housekeeping items. Please silence your cell phones while in chamber. Members of the public when speaking at the podium, and members of council before addressing any questions. Could you please adjust the mic so you're speaking directly into the end of it, because this is being live streamed for those who are not in chamber, and it will be posted on YouTube after if anyone wants to watch it. When finished speaking, please exit to the right of the podium to the lobby to allow room for anyone waiting in the chambers to speak. The public shall respect the decorum of the meeting, refrain from public outbursts or behavior intended to disrupt the discussion, respect the dignity of other rights of all persons present, please, and not ridicule, demean, or intimidate any persons. The Township of Oro-Medonte acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people and ancestral territory of the Huron-Wendat. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, the Ojibwa, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. It continues today as the home for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the historic Métis community in Penetangwisheen. The Anishinaabe people continue to have an enduring relationship with this land, specifically the Chippewas of Rama First Nations, the Chippewa Tri-Council, and the Williams Treaties First Nations. The Huron-Wendat Nation also continues to pay respect and protect their ancestors and heritage on this land. We honor the Indigenous history and culture that has thrived for millennia in the territory and the treaties that bind us together as partners in the spirit of a shared, sustainable, and prosperous future. We are all treaty people. Our commitment begins with acknowledging the truth so that we can move forward towards reconciliation. Miigwech. Madam Clerk, may we have a draft motion to adopt the agenda, please?
Moved by Clark, seconded by Young. Be it resolved that the agenda for the special council meeting of Wednesday, October 15th, 2025 be received and adopted.
All in favor? That is carried. May we have a draft motion to waive the procedure regarding the public correspondence received and to go past 4 hours if necessary, please?
Moved by Bard, seconded by Hutchison. Be it resolved that section 13.1G of the procedural bylaw number 2023-043 be waived to permit the correspondence pertaining to the Barrie boundary adjustment be made public and posted to the agenda following the public meeting. And that further, that section 14.20A be suspended in order to allow the meeting to proceed past the 4-hour adjournment requirement if necessary.
All in favor? That is carried. Members of council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll now move to the public meeting. Welcome to the public meeting of Oro-Medonte Council is being held in accordance to sections 173-3 of the Municipal Act to facilitate the opportunity for the public to provide comments relating to the City of Barrie's boundary adjustment proposal, also known as the Boundary Adjustment Agreement. All comments will be included as part of the record and will be shared with the City of Barrie and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Please be advised that this meeting is being digitally recorded for the purpose of a creation of a public record. There is no decision being made today, being made at today's public meeting. Explanation of process. I will briefly summarize the process to be utilized from the public meeting. The first part of this meeting will be to present the boundary adjustment, known as a restructuring proposal. The clerk will note any correspondence that has been received to date. At appropriate time, the clerk will call the names of the members of the public that have registered in advance of the meeting to provide public comment. Those not registered in advance that would like to make public comments will be provided the opportunity to do so once all registered participants have had the opportunity to speak. A time of 5 minutes will be given to each speaker. All comments should be addressed through the chair. I now will call upon the clerk to confirm notice of the meeting and dates of which notice was given.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notice of the public meeting was sent to immediately impacted and adjacent Oro-Medonte properties on September 25th, 2025. Notice was also posted on the township's communication channels over the past 3 weeks.
Thank you very much. Has there been any correspondence received on this, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I have that list.
Sorry, excuse me 1 second, Councillor Schell.
Yes, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk. Are we able to accommodate people who cannot make it up to the podium to speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe the mayor will address that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Just wanted the public to know.
Okay. So the following correspondence was received. Dennis and Kim Hickling, dated September 26, 2025. Walter Vaz, dated September 29th, 2025. SCS Consulting Group Limited, dated October 1st, 2025 and October 6th, 2025. MJ Mason Wells / Terry Wells, dated October 3rd, 2025. Davies Howe Land Development Advocacy and Litigation, dated October the 6th, 2025 ×2 and October the 10th, 2025. Monica Nink, dated October 7th, 2025, October 9th, 2025, and October 10th, 2025. Michael Boulay, Laura Klunsterman, May Alia Boulay, and Bianca Boulay, dated October 9th, 2025. Craig Fagel and family, dated October 14th, 2025. Lindsay Bernier, dated October 14th, 2025. Carol Harrison, dated October 14th, 2025. The WORA, West Oro Ratepayers Association, executive, dated October 15th, 2025. Jane Voorhees, dated October 15th, 2025. And Yvonne Klima, dated October 15th, 2025.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I will now turn the meeting over to Sean Binns, Chief Administrative Officer, to provide a presentation of the purpose and effect of the public meeting. Mr. Binns.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw, members of council, members of the public. Staff have put together a brief presentation which really aims to provide a high-level summary of the City of Barrie Adjustment Proposal and its evolution. The township also has a dedicated webpage on the matter which provides more detailed background information. Mayor Greenlaw, it's not the intent of staff to go through the presentation slide by slide. It's really there to provide some context. That being said, we do want to provide a few of the salient points for context regarding the public meeting. First, I think it's important to acknowledge that this process has been going on for nearly 2 years. It started in 2023 with a request from the City of Barrie for land in Oro-Medonte. As the process or that request evolved in May of 2024, there was the appointment of the Land Development Facilitator and the start of a provincially directed facilitation process within a defined study area that was put forward by the original request coming from the City of Barrie. Hemson Consulting, a planning consultancy, was engaged to undertake a preliminary land needs assessment, what's known as Stage 1 and 2, which was completed in December of 2024. That initial report concluded that Barrie had the following land needs: up to 930 hectares of developable land, up to 630 hectares of land for community use to the year 2051, and 300 hectares of developable land to 2060 1. Stage 3 of that process commenced in March of 2025, while at the same time Barrie advanced a proposal to council on May of this year, which outlined compensation in the amount of $12,500 per developable acre of land in Oro-Medonte and cross-border servicing for 935 units. In response to Barrie's proposal, the Township of Oro-Medonte adopted principles which have guided the township's navigation of the facilitation process. It's also important to note that cross-border servicing was not further considered, as there is not an overall net positive benefit when you consider all of the costs and factors of cross-border servicing. Over the last several months, negotiations have continued between the parties, guided by the Stage 3 findings, which have refined Barrie's land needs to 500 hectares of developable community land and 300 hectares of employment lands, which have been cited at a location of the 411 interchange extending northwards to Forbes Road. The proposal being advanced by the City of Barrie does not imply agreement by the Township of Oro-Medonte, although all parties have sought to consider respective interests to advance and come to agreement where possible. So that brings us to where we are today, and I'll just advance through the slide deck. Bear with me for a moment. And really, the provincial facilitation process is now complete, and the proposal before council is advancing according to provincial regulations. It is important to note that Oro-Medonte consideration of the City of Barrie's restructuring proposal is limited to accepting and agreeing to the proposal or rejecting it. It's what's called a with prejudice offer. There's little opportunity for council to revise or alter the provisions unless Barrie City Council reconsiders an amendment to their adoption of the proposal that was put before their council on the 29th of September, or as deemed appropriate by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing in the finalization and consideration of the proposals. All the feedback that we received tonight will be considered by council and forwarded to the City of Barrie and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And the two important considerations here are that if the township agrees to the proposal, the terms are laid out in the agreement that is before council. If council rejects the proposal, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing will consider the proposal along with Barrie's needs as determined through the Hempson process and determine appropriate action. I'll now turn it over to George Vadaboncoeur, our Manager of Planning and Special Projects, to speak about the specific lands that form part of the framework agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Binns. So just to assist everybody in orienting you, on your screen there, you'll see a map that shows the lands proposed to be annexed to the City of Barrie. On the left is Penetanguishene Road, or County Road 93. To the north, that is the northerly limit of the Heritage Estates winery. And on the right is line 1. And then if you look to the bottom left, you'll see just that the boundary extends just to the northern edge of the Baycrest Drive subdivision and the back of the lots that front on Shanty Bay Road. So this area represents about 457 hectares. And you may recall that when Barrie came to Oro-Medonte back in 2023, it was asking for 772 hectares. So the land area shown here is much smaller. The area in yellow or beige is the area that's been identified as developable. So those lands could be developed, and it's proposed that those lands be developed for community uses, which include housing and the infrastructure to support housing, such as institutional uses, small retail, commercial, the typical uses that you see in a residential subdivision. The area in white on the map are areas that are of environmental significance. They are designated environmental protection in the official plan. There's wetlands, and they're essentially defined as being undevelopable. So the lands in white are undevelopable. So the total developable lands are 274 hectares. It involves 26 properties, of which there are 18 residential properties and about 255 hectares of agricultural lands, which represents about 1.75% of the total farm area in Oro-Medonte. The draft agreement includes a commitment from the City of Barrie that the lands that are highlighted in yellow would be redesignated for community uses, as I outlined before, and the lands in white, as development occurs, would be dedicated to the City of Barrie for them to preserve as part of their heritage land system, their natural heritage land system. So there won't be development occurring on the lands in white, and that forms a buffer between the developable lands and the rural characteristic of Oro-Medonte east of line 1. You may ask yourself, why does the northerly part extend over to line 1? Well, those lands for the most part represent through lots, so the lots extend across from Penetangasheen Road right across to line 1, and there was a desire not to split legal descriptions or PIN numbers by putting the boundary straight up through the middle of the concession. Next slide, please. This slide represents employment lands that are proposed for the township of Springwater that are part of the boundary adjustment agreement with the township of Springwater. I just want to highlight two provisions in the restructuring agreement that pertain to the township of Oro-Medonte. There is a commitment by all parties to work on adding some employment lands southwest of the Craighurst settlement area, just south of Horseshoe Valley Road and adjacent Highway 400. Those have been identified as potential employment lands, so all parties will work toward that. And the second is all parties would work on lands around the Lake Simcoe Regional Airport to expand the employment uses around the airport. Next slide, please. Just want to touch on one specific piece of property, and this is referred to as the McLean Farm, and it's highlighted in red on the slide above. This was subject to a ministerial zoning order request back in 2019 by the Township of Oro-Medonte. It was approved by the County of Simcoe, but it was objected to by the City of Barrie. It's a rather large development with 691 seniors housing units and long-term care beds and 617 standard housing units. If this development were to go forward, it would be the largest single development in Oro-Medonte. And as Mr. Binns indicated earlier, the township has not planned for this type of development in terms of the infrastructure that would be required to support it. It would be the largest single development in Oro-Medonte, exceeding Craighurst, which is on its way to being the largest. It will have eventually 900 units. So when you compare 1,300 to 900 and a population of about 2,900 people, you can see the difference. So these lands are included in what Barry is proposing, and Barry has made a commitment to work with the property owners to see this development occur, which would be a benefit to the area in terms of providing much needed seniors housing and long-term care beds. The next slide just provides some details about the MZO proposal. I won't go into those details, and I'll turn it back to Mr. Binns.
Thank you, Mr. Vedaboncourt. I just wanted to highlight a few of the other elements as part of the restructuring agreement. First, the process. You'll see in the agreement, there's a number of recitals there that really recognize that the process and the timeline, the determination of the land needs, the engagement of stakeholders has been directed through the provincial land development facilitation process. The effective date, so this would come into effect January 1st of 2026, and that's really to comply with legislation which prevents annexation in a municipal election year. As Mr. Vedaboncourt alluded to, there are some bigger picture provisions in the agreement to support regional economic development and future employment opportunities in the township of Oro-Medonte. And the township will be reviewing that in more detail as part of our growth management strategy in 2025 and 2026. From a compensation perspective, Barry is proposing $15,000 per developable acre. With 677 developable acres, that translates into just over $10 million, which would be payable to the township on January 1st. The other side of the equation is the tax revenue that is lost, and that equates to about $43,282. That's based on 2025. And I think it's important to tease this out a little bit, to look at the tax revenue loss over a period of 30 years. If we look at that 43,000 and factor in inflation, that works out to be just over $2 million over a 30-year period. Conversely, if we took that $10,155,000, looked at an annual 4% rate of annual return over the same 30-year period, that equates to $33 million. So this is a net positive from a financial perspective to the township. The other provisions in the agreement, there's a number of administrative provisions. There's provisions for phase-in of taxes, 5 years for residential properties and 20 years for agricultural land. And as George had mentioned, protection of sensitive lands. The other provision, which may be new to those of you that reviewed the proposal that was tabled at the City of Barrie, is specific to Oro-Medonte, and it really reflects Council's recent decision to adjust ward boundaries for the next municipal election. So there are provisions in a specific appendix that highlights what those new ward boundaries would look like for the township of Oro-Medonte. Lastly, and to conclude, as you heard, all comments will be included as part of the public record and forwarded to the City of Barrie Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And on the 22nd of October, a week from today, Council will consider the option to either endorse or not endorse the proposed boundary adjustment. And then once considered by the township, the City of Barrie, and the County of Simcoe, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing will consider the proposal and determine appropriate action from there. Your Worship, members of Council, that concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Binns and Mr. Vedaboncourt. I do recommend everybody review the agenda and the deck. It's much more detailed. There's a lot more stuff, but tonight is the public meeting. It's our time to listen to your concerns, and this is not about us speaking to you. This is about you speaking to us. So I asked Mr. Binns and Mr. Vedaboncourt to be very brief and at a high level so that we can engage in what this meeting is, the purpose of this meeting is there for. I will now ask township staff to advise of those from the public that have registered in advance of the meeting to provide public comments. Each person may speak once with a maximum limit of 5 minutes. A timer will be displayed on the screen as a visual of how much time each speaker has remaining. And excuse me, in order to accommodate everyone, it's recommended that each speaker designate a single spokesperson to represent their organization. Once the 5 minutes is up, staff will call the next registered speaker to come forward. Those not registered to speak will be provided an opportunity to do so once all registered participants have had the opportunity to speak. We ask that when you approach the podium, please clearly state your name for the record. When finished speaking, please exit to the right of the podium into the lobby to allow room for anyone waiting to enter the chambers to speak. Madam Clerk, can we please advise the first speaker, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first speaker is Steve Schaefer.
Good evening, Mr. Schaefer. So all I need, just procedures, please state your name and please continue when ready, and we'll start the clock for you, please.
Okay, so good evening, Mayor Greenlaw and members of council. My name is Steve Schaefer, and I'm a civil engineer and a principal of SCS Consulting Group. We're located in Markham. Our firm specializes in municipal servicing and stormwater management, and we're the group engineer for the Midhurst Landowner Group. And my purpose here today is to address the servicing approach for the Barrie boundary adjustments. On September 16th of this year, RV Anderson prepared a summary of their Barrie versus Springwater servicing and transportation analysis. Our firm, together with TY Lynn and Crozier, provided a summary of concerns related to the information provided, which I believe you have been copied on. And I understand that this evening, Ainley and Associates, who are the Town of Springwater's consultant, are providing a similar review, and their conclusions are very consistent with what we've looked at as well. In general, the presentation lacked the detailed background information to substantiate the conclusions, and can therefore be misleading based on the information that was omitted. With regard to the transportation analysis, it's unclear on how the three scenarios that they assessed align with those considered for planning the water and wastewater. The different assumptions appear to be used compared with the Hempson land needs assessment, which creates inconsistencies in the land areas evaluated. On that basis, it's difficult to understand why scenario 1, the Springwater option, produces materially higher transportation costs than scenario 2 and 3, the Barrie options, given that all scenarios are premised on comparable growth in the region. With regard to the servicing presentation, it begins by noting that it's a high-level preliminary analysis and requires further study, such as a master servicing plan or a Class EA, before the size, location, and costs can be confirmed. There's more work required. The proposed sanitary sewer upgrades identified in the presentation don't appear to be consistent with the servicing capacity constraints that were identified in the 2019 Barrie sanitary servicing analysis, which was done in support of the boundary expansion at that time, which identified constraints with the existing Barrie sewer system at the city limits. The new and replacement sewer lengths appear to be different between the tables and the figures in the presentation. This could lead to updates and changes in costs. The wastewater servicing through Barrie hasn't taken into account the additional phosphorus and nutrient loading of the proposed growth area into the Lake Simcoe watershed and the associated Lake Simcoe Protection Plan requirements. This needs to be considered. There's an inconsistent approach to the application of the contingency costs and the design criteria between the Springwater and the Barrie servicing solutions, which skews the conclusions. 50% contingencies were only used in Springwater, and higher water and sanitary flow rates were used to analyze the Springwater infrastructure than the Barrie infrastructure. A consistent comparison is required. Most notably, the costs associated with the water supply and treatment and the sanitary treatment have been zeroed for the Barrie servicing scenarios, with a note that they should be considered part of Barrie's total planned treatment expansion cost. Barrie's 2019 master servicing plan didn't account for these proposed growth areas and indicates that the current capacity will be all utilized by 2031. There's currently over $500 million of water and wastewater infrastructure costs identified in the Barrie DC background study that are yet to be recovered through DC payments, of which any new growth areas serviced through Barrie would be obligated to pay their proportionate share, with potential for additional improvements to service additional growth areas not currently anticipated in the current DC background study. And I note that the Ainley study that review that was just done confirms this as well and notes that there's additional costs anticipated. So it's misleading to omit these costs from the cost analysis provided in the presentation, since there are water and sanitary treatment costs attributable to new growth, whether it's serviced through Barrie or Springwater. In summary, there are existing water and sanitary services within Barrie. However, the actual residual capacity or capability to be expanded to service new growth areas in Springwater is yet to be accurately determined. The comparative analysis provided to date is high level and lacks sufficient information to finalize a long-term approach to service the proposed growth areas. A fulsome, detailed, and fair analysis is required to thoroughly evaluate the water, sanitary, and transportation servicing requirements and associated costs for the proposed growth areas to clearly determine the most appropriate solution before a decision is made to finalize the ultimate servicing approach.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, could we have the next speaker, please?
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Alex Lusty.
Mr. Rusty? Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Alex Lusty. I'm a lawyer and partner at Davies Howe out of Toronto. And this evening, I'm appearing for the 10 members of the Midhurst Landowners Group. You noted the correspondence we have on file. That explains that the group opposes annexation because there's no need for it, and because this process has been inherently flawed. So I'll start with the question of need. And though it doesn't squarely involve Oro, I'd like to first look at the employment land need evidence, because it speaks to what's transpired here. In December 2024, it was concluded by Hemson that Barrie has enough employment land to 2051, and that annexing land would not help them with their immediate shortfall. That doesn't support annexation, and it certainly doesn't support annexation in Oro, because none of Oro's lands are going to be used for employment. And though it's unclear why, this summer the employment timeline was stretched from 2051 to 2061. And look, no one has a crystal ball to know what's going to happen to 2061, but we should all be able to see that there's no urgency to this annexation when it's got a 35-year timeline. Let's look at the housing question. So when it comes to housing, the county, Barrie, and Oro are all in the same market, right? That means that any shortfall in Barrie will be met by other members of the county. So when you take the employment land timeline, you take the housing reality about the market, and you put that together, the evidence just doesn't support annexation. And, putting it off for a while, at the very least, would give a period of reflection for Barrie, and they could look at making use of their vacant and underutilized lands, attracting higher value, more land-intensive employers befitting a city, and how to service the southern employment lands that they already have. I'd like to talk about the process now. So if this process feels off, that's because it is. This process was developed in the 1990s to reduce the number of rural municipalities in the province. At that time, there was 815. Now, Total municipalities, 444. It was created by the Savings and Restructuring Act, and the idea was to accomplish tax savings by making it easier to eliminate administrative duplication within and between counties. So if you look at the reason for this process, it talks about eliminating levels of government, about managing the resultant transfer of power, and making the voting system match what's been done. There is nothing about growth management in that process. In fact, the government of the day explained the need for the process in terms like this. Costs of general government must go down. Taxpayers will tolerate nothing less. Staff reductions are inevitable in most cases. Restructuring can be an effective tool to cut costs, reduce overlap and duplication, and help maintain or improve services to taxpayers. Again, the point was to cut taxes by cutting the cost of municipal government. The decisions are supposed to be obvious, accounting and HR type issues. This process wasn't meant to be a growth management process. So with that background, it shouldn't come as a surprise that the minister does not have the authority to issue the restructuring order sought, even if everyone consented to it. That's because to maintain the scope of this legislation, there were prohibitions on restructuring types put into the regulation. And one prohibited restructuring type is any type that results in any part of an upper tier municipality not being part of a local municipality. If this annexation occurs, Simcoe County, which is an upper tier, would lose part of Oro, which is a local municipality. That kind of splintering of municipalities was never considered. This restructuring type was prohibited then, it's still prohibited now, and given that prohibition, this process, quite frankly, is unexplainable. So, in conclusion, okay, given that there's no immediate need for the annexation, given the downsides to Oro, and given the questionable authority of the minister here, we ask that Oro advise all those involved that it does not support annexation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lusky. Madam Clerk, may we have the next speaker, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Jane Voorhees.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to stand over here because I want to speak to the residents that are here tonight. I want to take a moment not to debate Barry's annexation proposal because I think a lot of you know where I stand. I spent a lot of time talking in front of council and writing a lot of letters, but I want to spend some time thanking the residents of Oro-Medonte and the group Friends of the Future. Almost 2 years ago, when Mayor Nuttall announced his plan to annex thousands of acres of our farmland and our environmental land for industrial development, many city politicians thought it would be a done deal. But what they didn't count on was you, the residents who love this rural land that we call a community. Since that day, Oro-Medonte has shown what real community spirit looks like. You've gone door to door in every kind of weather, collecting signatures on a petition to stop annexation. You've stood in a snowstorm. You've bundled up and determined, setting up booths so every neighbor could have a voice. You supported a public awareness campaign that caught the attention across Simcoe County. Bright red signs declaring no annexation, no factories here, our land, our choice. Those words became a rallying cry and a symbol of our unity and our purpose. Together, we gathered around 3,000 signatures from Barrie Ward 1 and Oro-Medonte and presented them to council. You filled inboxes, town halls, and council chambers with passionate appeals to respect our land, our environment, and our homes. And when Barrie City Council held its meeting a couple of weeks ago, you showed up, calm, united, and wearing white. You represented Oro-Medonte's conviction. But I also want to thank our local media for helping our region understand what this annexation is about, for shining light on complex issues and keeping our story alive even when negotiations happen behind closed doors. I know it's been a long and challenging road, but tonight I want every single person here to know your voices, your actions, your unwavering commitment to stop this annexation have reminded everyone that Oro-Medonte is not just a place on a map. It's a community who cares and stands together. But I also want to turn around and acknowledge those who have stood beside us, our mayor, our deputy mayor, and council members. Thank you for listening, for encouraging our involvement, and for standing up residents to protect our land. And also a heartfelt thank you to our township staff, our CAO, our planning department, our communications department, our clerk's office and front desk for your professionalism and your patience. You've answered many of my calls, you've met with residents, and guided us through a very complicated process. I want everyone to know that I have faith and trust in our mayor and deputy and council to continue representing the people of Oro-Medonte and to stand firm and say no to annexation, both to the city of Barrie and to Minister Flack. It's vital that we enact ministerial orders that protect our land. And because, as many of you know, I can't let this issue pass tonight without confronting one more key fact. In Barrie's annexation proposal, the city wants to annex 630 hectares of developmental residential land in Springwater and Oro-Medonte. Yet, the Stage 3 Hempson report concludes that Barrie only needs 500 hectares. That's 130 hectares more than required, an overreach that would nearly cut the needed annexation area of our land and what Mr. Van Keur's map showed in half. So again, we must ask, is this annexation truly necessary? Once again, the city of Barrie appears to be stretching the facts to justify a land grab that simply isn't needed. I strongly believe that armed with facts, Oro-Medonte can contribute to Ontario's housing goals. That means affordable, responsible development around our existing settlement areas and continued well-planned industrial growth around Highway 11. That is responsible planning. Barrie must understand this. You don't fix planning failures by pushing boundary lines outward. You fix them by planning smarter within them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Voorhees. Madam Clerk, we have the next registered speaker, please.
Yvonne Klima, or Klima. And I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
Hello, Yvonne Klima, 32-year resident of this beautiful township, many familiar faces. Raised my kids here. So I'm really only here to talk about the creatures great and small who are not represented here at this meeting. Around the wetland on the 5th, 6th, and the 1st is home and providing for 25 to 30 mammal species, 100 species of birds, both migratory and year-round residents, 15 to 25 species of reptiles and amphibians, 200 to 400 species of plants, mosses, liverworts, lichens, and fungi, numbering 100 to 300. Now, I'm not going to go into Doug Ford's decision here to disregard environmental areas and expose them to development. So I'm not going to dwell on this because I think we've all read about that. This is not what Ontario residents want. So, but what I did want to point out about the ramifications of even light industry along the Penetanquishene Road opposite the city of Barrie's boundary. Factories have 24/7 bright industrial lighting, especially at night for security reasons. This would disturb and destroy any nesting and mating for all creatures. It confuses their biological clocks. Depending on shift work, the lighting situation will be exacerbated. There's a constant hum and drone from rooftop HVAC machinery, fans, building ventilation systems, ductwork, and loud noises. This confuses all species and adds extreme stress to their lives. Noises from large trucks and workers coming and going do more of the same. Exterior holding tanks risk leakage into sensitive environmental areas. Boilers, even high-efficiency boilers, need to be constantly maintained and add more rooftop noise. Winter snow removal is noisy, generally done at night. So any and all of the general noises, compressors or generators, waste removal, all of this is highly detrimental to the creatures living in the sensitive adjacent fields, forest, and wetland. In fact, many creatures will either abandon the areas altogether or many will die. So I'm actually asking council members to expand the environmentally protected zone up to the city of Barrie boundary. This will ensure safeguards for the sloping fields adjacent to the wetland and to take control and enlarge this sensitive area. So once again, every time I come back from the city where I work in Toronto, I drive down the 5th, 6th side road, and I've always envisioned a natural learning center, a nature learning center opposite the Calvary Church with ample room for school bus parking, a nice building, hands-on demonstrations for children, carefully constructed boardwalk over the fields, into the wetlands, and then into the forest with platforms along the way for teaching visitors and children. We all know about the nesting swans. There were 7 cygnets last year. I don't know how many there were this year. There are no less than 25 or 26 herons nesting on the rookery. There's a beaver lodge and a dam. This is what would become Oro's jewel. And the city of Barrie would certainly be happy to send busloads of children to admire everything that's being created. We want green industry, but in suitable locations along highway corridors where it can accommodate heavy traffic, lighting, and noise. This is wisdom. So moral and ethical decisions come from your heart. Council members are gifted with the power to make decisions. Please do so wisely. Your decisions will reverberate for all future generations. We are only temporary stewards of what is priceless and irreplaceable. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next registered speaker, please.
Greg Wood.
Mayor Greenlaw and members of council, my name is Greg Wood. I live on Barrie Terrace in Oro-Medonte Township, and I've been an Oro-Medonte resident for 26 years. I don't envy your position in having to approve this agreement. The agreement you've been given is flawed, as we heard earlier tonight. The city of Barrie has a history of agreeing to one thing and then doing something completely different. I'd list a bunch of times when that happened, but we only have 5 minutes. Knowing this to be true, what future safeguards do we see in this agreement in order to protect Oro-Medonte residents? It sounds like there's some financial benefit, which is great, might be realized over the next 30 years, but there's a lot of other concerns. I personally don't support this agreement, but if you choose to support it, I would say the following minimum conditions must be added to this draft agreement and must be binding on the corporation of the city of Barrie. At the very least, any potential breach of this agreement would result in financial remedies to Oro-Medonte. Number one, City of Barrie agrees and will enforce that all lands adjacent to Oro-Medonte residential lots in the proposed annex area must have a minimum undeveloped 75-meter green buffer zone between developed areas and the existing residential lot lines. Right now, I think they've got 30 meters, but it's only in one spot. That's not sufficient. The City of Barrie and the province agree to a 30-year prohibition moratorium on any additional potential annexation into Oro-Medonte lands, including the lands in the Highway 400 to Forbes Road study area. This was granted to Innisfil Township back during the 1980 annexation, and they had to wait till, I believe, 2012 until they were able to do it again. That's something that probably should be in this agreement. I don't see it there. Number three, the City of Barrie would agree to not to seek connection to the existing Oro-Medonte road known as Colburn Street to any road created within the annexed lands. If we look at where that parcel is, logically, that road, Penetang Machine Road, is going to have a big problem with traffic. They're going to have to relieve it somehow. Colburn Street would probably be a great place to do it. The problem is that's a residential neighborhood. That's going to turn into a disaster. And Oro-Medonte is going to have to deal with it. Number four, and probably one of the more important things, if the lands marked as EP and are thus undevelopable, become in future to be developed on, like the City of Barrie's never done that before, the City of Barrie agrees to pay full compensation to Oro-Medonte Township at the prescribed rate in Section 6.2 of the agreement, plus an inflation adjustment accrued to the date of such development actually happening. And again, I've only got 5 minutes. I'd love to go down the list of times where this has actually happened, where they did develop on EP land. They've done it many times. Who's going to stop them from doing it again? Number five, I'm not a lawyer, but I would suggest some kind of a revenue clause outlining specific remuneration awards financially to Oro-Medonte in the event of breach of any of these conditions and any other conditions, because they're probably going to do it. An agreement is the result of negotiation between two or more parties. In it, all parties to agree to give and take specific concessions. This draft agreement appears to be an agreement by Barrie, for Barrie, and of Barrie. I think these amendments I put forth are reasonable, and if they weren't to be accepted by the City of Barrie, then the agreement should be declined. One other point I wanted to make, when I was reviewing the draft agreement, I see even the maps that they show, the map of their annexed land into Oro and the map of the economic development area, Oro's not even shown on this map. They don't seem to agree. I'm not sure who came up with these maps, but the Oro portion is not even shown on here. Anyway, I thank you for your time, and please consider my suggestions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wood. Madam Clerk, the next registered speaker, please.
Greg Harris.
My name is Greg Harris. Good evening. My address is 8 Baycrest Drive, Barrie, Ontario, but it's just the mailing part. I assure you I live and pay taxes in Oro-Medonte. Yvonne Klima tonight and at the last meeting at the Barrie City Hall, I believe it was Susan Marcellus from Shanty Bay, spoke for animals in the marshland areas, hoping they'd be considered and protected. And right after that, Barrie Mayor Alex Nuttall mentioned that protected animals and protected trees would be considered. His use of the word protected sounded like basically legalese vocabulary to me, and I inferred it meant all species will be considered. That certainly isn't going to change any development plans. That was my inference. Ontario's Bill 5 has repealed significant parts of Ontario's Endangered Species Act, and the opinion of Environmental Defence is that Ontario no longer recognizes at least 100 at-risk animal species. Given the MZO powers and Barrie's intent to annex local areas for development, I believe Barrie Mayor Nuttall, he'll certainly start development in Oro-Medonte. And there's really not much longer much of a legal need to regard the natural environment. There was a short while ago. My opinion, Ontario's basically said full speed ahead to development, which I think suits Barrie's annexations plans really quite well. And this is counter to Oro-Medonte's official plan from 2023 in the section about maintaining Oro-Medonte's natural heritage. Another comment made by Mayor Noddle was to rebut one of my neighbors who said the land was going to be used for industrial uses. And he quite clearly stated it would only be used for community lands, commercial things. So houses, convenience stores, perhaps a hotel, not industrial. And then he added, to rebut one of my neighbors who said the land was going to be used for industrial uses. And he quite clearly stated it would only be used for...
Yeah. Sorry. No. Deputy Mayor Lavoie, I think you got feedback. So my apologies. Please continue.
That's okay. And so he said, it's not going to be used for industrial reasons. And then he added, at this point. That means he can change that to industrial whenever he wants, because at this point, that's history, as soon as he said that. Greg Wood also made excellent points and suggestions about what should happen if Barrie does become successful annexation, and I think you should seriously consider what he has to say. And I don't trust that a potential annexation will do anything to benefit the natural heritage of Oro-Medonte. I believe it will bring harm to those without a voice, and possibly harm to those of us with a voice. Mayor Greenlaw, Council, keep working to keep all parts of Oro-Medonte in Oro-Medonte. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Welcome, Deputy Mayor Lavoie. I'm glad you're able to make it. So, Madam Clerk, could we have the next registered speaker, please?
Brian Presnell.
It's Bryn, I believe. Bryn Presnell. It's okay.
My apologies.
Mayor Greenlaw, Deputy Mayor Lavoie, and councillors. My name is Bryn Presnell. It doesn't have an A in it. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding proposed municipal boundary changes. I'm not the last, but certainly all the words you've heard have been powerful and moving. I would like to state that I'm opposed to expanding the boundaries of Barrie Oro-Medonte into Oro-Medonte. This process began a few years ago, as we've heard tonight, with the proposed municipal zoning order affecting the land known as the McLean Farm. The proposed uses for the land now and the boundaries now have changed over time, but the end result is the same, and it is against, in my view, the best interests of Barrie, Oro-Medonte, and Simcoe County and the province to proceed with this type of expansion. This land is not needed at this time. We've heard this before, and we've heard it again today. This particular land drains away from Barrie and towards those environmentally protected zoned areas. Servicing this land will require pumping stations according to the experts, and we've had the experts talk to us tonight about that, far more than I know. How many Simcoe County citizens and how many Barrie councillors have stood on the 5th-6th side road just west of the first line and looked over at those 20 great heron nests, all in one small location? Why does a city want to annex this type of land? Why does a city want to build on land that drains into these areas? Whether it is commercial, residential, or industrial development, it will still have the same negative impact. The only gain from this is a very few landowners, developers, and speculators. Now, personally, the karma yesterday was we were driving in our car at 4:21 in the afternoon, driving west, and an animal came out from the wetland on the left side. It was very slow. We slowed and we stopped. It was a beaver. This was the karma for coming tonight. Please think of the future generations with Simcoe County, Oro-Medonte, and Barrie. What do we want to leave for people in the future? Please think of the great responsibility that you have here tonight to ensure that this particular land is wisely preserved according to the official plans of Simcoe County and Oro-Medonte. This is a legacy issue. Please reject the expansion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Presnell. Madam Clerk, the next registered speaker, please.
Kathleen Wormsbecker.
Hello, Mayor and Council and fellow citizens. My name is Kathleen Wormsbecker. I live at 11 Baycrest Drive, and I want to make comments tonight on Barry's proposal of annexed lands from Oro-Medonte. Like many Oro-Medonte, Barry, and Springwater residents, I have several concerns and objections to Barry's proposed annexation. My three primary concerns are as follows. First issue of concern is the McLean lands are prioritized for development. See 4.4 and 4.5 of Barry's proposal. The original 2020 proposal of McLean Park, while proposing senior housing and long-term care, was little more than concept drawings. Appallingly, sludge management on the southern property border and possible road connections to the two fields to the south, which the McLean family did not own, demonstrated that the project was inadequately planned. The MZO was not supported by the City of Barrie. The minister did not approve the MZO. The McLean Park concept plan has no planning approval status. Barrie and Oro-Medonte residents bordering the McLean property must be assured that any further development will be properly planned. Also, what assurance do we have that these lands will, in fact, be developed for seniors' housing? If annexation is approved, the senior development proposal on the McLean lands or any other development proposal, and all annexed lands must be properly planned through a comprehensive secondary plan approvals process. This will help ensure that all land use planning, servicing, and transportation matters are thoroughly evaluated and the public has an opportunity to comment on the type, form, and scale of proposed developments. The matters to be addressed by the secondary plan approval process are summarized in my written submission, so I won't bore you with that part. The second issue of concern is more land is now proposed to be annexed. In Barry's proposal, the two fields to the south of the McLean property, which adjoin the northern boundary of Baycrest Drive, are now included in the proposed annexation. How did this additional land grab come about? What is a justification? What will stop further annexation happening again in the near future? And finally, the third issue of concern is Barry's proposal about buffer lands, which is number 2 of Barry's proposal. Baycrest Drive residents are very concerned about the narrow widths of the buffer lands. The lands are described as a 30-meter wide strip adjoining the northern boundary of Baycrest Drive, scheduled to be parkland. A much wider buffer zone is required. It must be designated for passive recreational uses only, like pedestrian bike trails only, no motorized trails, sports fields, sports courts, buildings, structures, and lighting. It should be connected to the forested area to the northeast, which is not to be developed. This should connect to other parkland and trails that were included in the original McLean Park proposal. Additionally, the old Coburn Street road allowance, as it adjoins Baycrest Drive, should be within the buffer zone and never to be developed as a roadway. If anybody's ever tried to walk up that, it is very steep, and any child from my house who walked up there got mega poison ivy. Anyway, in fact, green space buffers should be developed between all new development and adjacent existing residential property throughout the annexed land. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, is that the last of our registered speakers?
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. So if there's no other registered speakers, we will provide an opportunity to, what we will do is now is we will move to invite members of the gallery to speak. So the order we're going to do it in is, first I want to deal with the people who are affected or property owners of the land that's being proposed to be annexed. Come to the mic, give your name, and we'll give everyone who is an owner or is affected by those lands personally that we can have them speak. And then I would ask that the next person line up behind them so that we can move through in a fairly proficient manner. So the first person, Mr. Sperling. If you could just state your name and then please continue when ready, sir.
Steve Sperling. I live at 364 Shanty Bay Road, and I'm a new resident of Oro. I've only been here 40 years. Basically, I'm a developer. I have built 3 million square feet of industrial commercial land in Barrie, or buildings in Barrie, 42 sites, and probably about 1.5 million square feet to the south of Barrie, closer to the Toronto region. The requirements today, from an environmental standpoint, planning are tremendous compared to what it used to be years ago. So there are many things that would have to be satisfied. And it was interesting about the previous speaker, because she was talking about my land. Because I'm the guy that's south of the McLean farm, and I'm the guy that has had the local people steal the trees off my property for Christmas trees. So I've got 19 acres, and we've been before this council probably 4 times in 35 years. It started with looking to have about 30 residential lots. They would have been large lots, and then we went to 20, and we even got down to 8, and it was turned down because at that time, Oro was against any sort of development in that area. As far as I'm concerned, I think that the planning and the province, and I'm not a great supporter of Barrie because I've been fighting Barrie for 45 years. But I will say that they've done a lot of good things, and I can tell you that there is a tremendous need for housing today. You've had a number of people come from the Midhurst area, other developers, and really the reason why they're really against any sort of this development is because their costs of development are huge compared to what would happen in Oro. Therefore, they're going to have a great competition for residential properties. As far as the industrial goes, Barrie is sitting with a lot more industrial land that is raw, ready to be developed, than what they're coming forward with. So I don't understand the whole industrial approach that they've taken. Veterans Drive, I've got 13 acres at Salem and Veterans, where we could develop now. Across the road from me, there's 150 acres that could be developed. As far as drainage is concerned, when we go back to Oro, where I'm living, there's no sewer pumps that are going to be required. It's all drainage back into the city drainage system. As far as the sewers go, the sewers are on Penetang Machine Road. Those sewers were paid for partially by Barrie, but basically the taxpayers of Ontario. It was the province that came up with money for that sewer line that goes down there. So I think it's obvious we should be connecting into those sewers. As far as staging, this could be staged over many years. I'm not one that's looking for a high density situation, but there is a requirement for housing, and the way it's set in this province today, it's so expensive to develop where there aren't proper services. there's no market, because by the time those houses are finished, nobody's going to buy them. So that's the situation. I would imagine that this city of Barrie could be developing more to the south, but I think they're talking hundreds of millions of dollars for servicing, while Oro has the services across the road. And it's very funny, if you drive along Old Penetang Machine Road and you look at one side of the street that's got sidewalks and curbs, and especially going up Old Penetang Machine Road, and the Oro side hasn't been developed. It's waiting to be developed. The city of Barrie is on the other side of that curb. So as far as I'm concerned, I think we should be looking towards annexation. And I also am not in favor of the industrial component, but that's down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spurn, can I ask you just one question for clarity? So do you feel there is a need for industrial land to be part of the annexation package, or do you feel there's ample industrial land already in Barrie?
I think that's a red herring. I don't think there's any need for the industrial component. I think there's needs for schools. I think there's needs for affordable housing, but and senior development. I don't see the need for industrial because Barrie has the industrial land. They're saying they don't. As a matter of fact, the mayor just called me the other day and says, we have to have this land because we've got this great demand for industry. I said, well, I've been doing it since 1971. How come you're not calling me? I mean, we're the largest diversified industrial commercial developer in Barrie. I'm not getting any calls. I mean, I was the guy that took the old GE building, which was going to be abandoned, and turned it into offices and 150,000 square feet of warehousing. So, and unfortunately, you were talking about the swans before. The swans are at Milligan's Pond. I own half of Milligan's Pond, and the homeless were eating them. So that shows you some of the aspect of how Barrie is running their city.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. Is there anyone else who has land or is directly adjacent to the lands that wants to speak at this time? I don't see any, so now I'll open it up to anyone who's a resident of Oro-Medonte who would like to come up and speak, and just give your name at the mic, and then if the next person could walk in and we can file single file behind them. So please, ma'am, come up, just state your name, and yeah, and you may want to adjust the mic so you're speaking in it, just so the people at home can. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Helen McCrae. I'm a 17-year resident of Oro-Medonte, and before that I lived in Barrie for 10 years. I'm speaking probably more to the industrial commercial aspect of this than the housing, but there are some things that go beyond it. I'm not in support of Barrie's proposed annexation because, in my opinion, bad decisions in the past should not be rewarded now. The Hemson report is clear that it's not needed, despite the assertions of the city. In my years as a Barrie taxpayer, Barrie gave up industrial land to residential developers, especially in the Mapleview area. They did not fully develop the land within the city supposed to be for industrial and commercial uses. For example, Molson Park, former fairgrounds on Esther Road, the land's annexed from Innisfil. And I appreciate what Mr. Sperling is saying, because I actually tried to get some of your land to build an ambulance station on once upon a time. You didn't tell me that. Anyway, the city also has permitted non-taxable uses to be built on industrial commercial land. And I've got just a couple of examples. The police and ambulance campus on Fairview Road. They don't pay taxes. You know, they're city property. Two churches on Esther Road in Mapleview are just not very far from the old Yam plant. Those don't pay taxes. Through the 1990s and into the 2000s, the city made a deliberate policy choice to favor single-family housing over multi-residential, thus delaying intensification by many years. This has resulted in a higher tax burden on homeowners. And that's not the only reason, but it is one reason that I was happy to retire to Oro-Medonte. This annexation process doesn't appear to me to be a true negotiation, but rather an imposition of Barrie's wishes on its neighbors. The motives thus seem to be suspicious, given the Hempson report. The compensation offered to Oro-Medonte seems to be a drop in the bucket compared to the benefits likely to accrue to the city. The negative impact of this proposed outcome underscores why, in my opinion, Barrie should no longer be a separated city. I think Mr. Lusty's presentation also bears this out. Municipalities within a two-tier system share the burdens and benefits of all of them. They do not rob their neighbors. This process is a zero-sum game, and it seems to me that Oro-Medonte is likely to be the loser. So I would encourage you to do all you can to push back against this agreement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. McCrae. Is there anyone else from Oro-Medonte that would like to speak to this matter in the gallery? Seeing none, is there anyone that's outside Oro-Medonte that would like to speak to this matter? Is there anyone who is unable to get to the mic and would like us to bring a microphone to you? I just want to make sure we cover off all components of this. These are a great bunch of listeners. Okay, well then, I want to first I want to make sure I don't miss off on anything. The procedures are important. I want to first and foremost thank everybody who has come here tonight. One thing I am very proud, and this council is very proud of, is the professionalism and the decorum and the respect you have for one another. And unfortunately, I've seen in other municipalities where things aren't quite as respectful. And that's the great thing about Oro-Medonte. We do understand, respect one another. We don't always agree on things, but it doesn't mean we have to be ignorant to each other. So I want to thank you all for that.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion for the public receipt.
You want me to do that before I give my closing remarks? Like I was just getting all revved up, no? So, no, please go ahead if you would like to bring the motion forward, please.
Okay. Moved by Lavoie, seconded by Shell. Be it resolved that the public comments from the special council meeting of October 15th, 2025 be received in consideration of the October 22nd, 2025 meeting, and that the public comments be shared with the City of Barrie and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
I'll call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? None. Thank you very much. That carries. As indicated earlier, after consideration, comments received as part of the public meeting and engagement process outlined in the Municipal Act, the proposal will be considered at our next regular scheduled meeting on October 22nd, and that meeting will start at 3 o'clock. On behalf of all of council, thank you very much for coming out tonight. We've been very much engaged with so many of you throughout the last 2.5 years, and we will continue to do everything within our power to adhere to what your wishes are, but also if we have to give up land, to put the best securities that we can. Unfortunately, we are marching to the drum of the facilitation process, and we do have limited powers, but it's not that we haven't been very blunt and candid to the facilitators and the participating parties. At the end of the day, this council wants to do its best for the entire area, with Oro-Medonte being the primary focus. So once again, thank you very much for your attendance. Very good comments tonight, and read to the point, because I know some of you want to go watch the baseball game. So, yeah, so, Madam Clerk, can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
Mr. Mayor, first I will call for the confirming bylaw.
Sure.
Moved by Young, seconded by Shell. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2025-102, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting held on Wednesday, October 15th, 2025, be passed in open council this 15th day of October 2025.
All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. And a motion to adjourn, please.
Moved by Hutchison, seconded by Bard. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 7:20 p.m.
All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you very much, everybody, and have yourself a great evening.